She closed the door in front of me and said, "You don't exist for me anymore." I stood there as if struck by thunder. What happened after that would change everything. Hello, I'm Ryan. I used to think family was everything until the phone call that would change everything. I had spent years of my life trying to meet expectations that were never mine. My father, always cold, would make sure I knew my place. When I was younger, it was clear that my sister, Jessica, was the shining star of the family. She never had to try, everything just seemed to fall into place for her. While I slaved away building a future, it was Jessica who always got the attention and praise. But things got ugly at a family dinner when my dad told me, over the phone, not to come home for my mom's birthday. Not because I was busy or had something more important to do, but because my sister was bringing her boyfriend, a manager, someone important. And my work, my achievements, they weren't enough. They made it clear, I would be an embarrassment to the family. And the worst part was that my dad's words were final, his tone ice cold. "Don't call me your father if you still insist on coming." The words were like a slap to my face. I stood there, my coffee mug still in hand, my body numb. It wasn't anger at first, it was disbelief. This couldn't be happening, not to me. But the realization was like a dark cloud forming in my mind. All those years of helping them out, paying their bills quietly, paying off their debts, none of it mattered to them. And now, I was the family's shame. I sat there, the silence in my apartment deafening. They hadn't even noticed. No calls. No texts. No "how are you?" And here I was, spending almost $10,000 on their utilities over the last 2 years, and they couldn't even spare a single moment to acknowledge it. I opened my banking app and scrolled through the transactions. The number didn't shock me, it wasn't the first time I had helped. But seeing that $9,842.17 just for utilities alone was a reminder of how invisible I had become in their eyes. My hand shook as I processed the payments, one by one. They had never asked, never even seemed to care. And I realized something that had always been nagging at me. What about Jessica? Had she ever done anything to contribute? Was this all on me? My thoughts went back to the years of being ignored, of standing in the background, in family photos where I was always the one slightly out of focus. My parents had always seen her as the future, the one who would carry their legacy. I was just there, quietly, in the background, keeping things together. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let this go. It was time to stop being the invisible man in the family. Time to stop letting them use me. So, I took action. I opened the utility accounts in my name, the ones I had been paying for them for 2 years. I had never asked for recognition, but this was different. They didn't get to use me like this anymore. I disconnected their services. The power, the water, the internet, gone. 3 weeks before my mother's birthday. Let them see how they felt without me. As the days passed, I didn't hear a word from them. Silence. It was almost like they had forgotten me entirely. But the weight in my chest, the empty space they had left, had never felt heavier. My sister was busy posting photos on Instagram of her perfect life. My parents were either too proud or too ashamed to even acknowledge me. They had made their choice. Then the day came. The day everything changed. I received a call from my mother. But this wasn't a call to check in or ask how I was doing. No, this was different. Her voice was strained. "Ryan, what did you do?" she asked. I stared at the phone, my stomach sinking. And I realized, finally, this was their reality crashing down on them. No power, no water, no internet. No more safety net. They were feeling the sting of their own actions. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there, the silence between us stretching longer than it had in years. And then, in a moment that I didn't even expect, I heard her voice crack. "Please, Ryan," she begged. "You have to fix this. The house, we can't survive without it." Her voice was small, almost pleading. But it was too late. They had made their choice. And now, they would live with the consequences. It felt strange, like a part of me wanted to give in, to do what I always did, fix it for them. But another part, the part that had been invisible for so long, was done. Done being the silent provider. Done being the one they only turned to when they needed something. I hung up the phone, the weight of it settling in. I wasn't going to fix it this time. Not for them. Not anymore. The following days passed in a strange, eerie silence. No more calls. No more texts. But every now and then, I would catch myself staring at the phone in my hand, waiting for the call that never came. And then the realization hit me. This wasn't just about the house or the utilities. This was about something deeper. A truth I had been avoiding for far too long. I had been the one left out. Left behind. But now, I was going to make sure they knew what it felt like to be abandoned. The days dragged on. They passed in eerie silence, punctuated only by the occasional buzz of my phone, yet I wasn't expecting anything of importance. No calls. No texts. No word at all. It was almost as if my family had completely wiped me from their lives, like the years of effort and sacrifice I had put into keeping them afloat had never happened. They were living in their own little world, and I was nothing but a shadow, a ghost. The thought wasn't as painful as it used to be. I had anticipated the silence, almost welcomed it. But what I didn't expect was what would happen when it became clear that they were truly feeling the weight of their decisions. 3 days passed after I disconnected their utilities. In the back of my mind, I had been waiting for them to come crawling back. Maybe a simple apology, or a request to talk, to resolve things. But that never came. The phone remained quiet. No texts. No missed calls. Just the quiet ticking of the clock as I moved through my day, the silence hanging heavily in the air. Then, on the 4th day, my mother's name flashed across my phone. It felt strange. A sense of dread and anticipation filled me. I didn't pick up right away. Instead, I stared at the screen. The weight of the situation hit me all at once. This was the moment they would either swallow their pride and apologize, or they would ignore it completely. I finally answered. Her voice, when it came through the speaker, was strained. I could tell she had been crying. "Ryan, what did you do?" she asked, the words tremulous and raw. At that moment, I didn't know how to answer. Part of me wanted to let out a bitter laugh. I had given them everything. Money, time, energy. But in the end, it didn't matter. I had never been the golden child. They were never going to see me for what I was, just a tool for their comfort. What did I do? I echoed back, feeling the familiar tension in my chest. I did what you forced me to do. You wanted me to be invisible? You got it. I could hear her sniffling. Ryan, we can't survive without it. The house, the bills, it's all falling apart. The pleading in her voice was palpable. And for a moment, I thought about giving in. I thought about fixing it all like I always did, being the one who quietly put everything back together. But that moment passed. I wasn't going to do it anymore. Instead of responding, I simply ended the call. I didn't hang up out of anger or rage. It was just, done. I hung up because there was nothing more to say. No apology, no repair, no fixing it. It was over. As the days went on, the silence remained. My phone stayed quiet. My family continued to live their lives without me in it. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The consequences of my actions would ripple through everything they had taken for granted. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. And when the consequences came, they would be left to pick up the pieces. I would watch it unfold from a distance, but I would never lift a finger to help. Not this time. I spent the following week focusing on work. There was a strange satisfaction in my routine, an odd sense of control I hadn't had in years. My mind was occupied with things that mattered, my company, my goals, my future. I couldn't waste any more time thinking about them. I didn't care what they thought, what they were feeling. Then, on day 8, it happened. The first sign of what my family had been hiding. My mother called me again. But this time, she wasn't begging for forgiveness. This time, she was angry. "You've ruined everything," she shouted into the phone. "You've destroyed your father and me. What are we supposed to do now?" The rage in her voice was a cold echo of the disapproving tone I had heard so many times in the past. She had stopped pretending. She was furious. I felt a flicker of something, regret, maybe, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I had already decided this was the only way forward. I didn't respond to her anger. I simply listened, the words filtering through me like white noise. I heard her out, until the rage finally faded into something quieter, something more desperate. She began pleading once again. "Ryan, please. We don't know how to fix this. We need you." For a second, I thought about going back. I thought about going to the house, plugging in the lights, paying the bills, making everything right again. But then I thought about the years of being pushed aside, the years of silence, the years of sacrifice that had meant nothing. I ended the call once again. The silence returned, and I didn't care. I was free now, free from their manipulation, free from the expectations they had piled on me. But there was something I hadn't counted on. They were going to have to learn how to live without me. And when they realized they couldn't, when they realized how much they had relied on me for everything, they would come crawling back. But by then, it would be too late. It had been 2 weeks since I cut them off. My phone was still quiet. But I knew something was coming. The consequences were building, and I would be waiting when it all fell apart. And when it did, I would be the one watching from a distance, with no intention of helping. Not anymore. 3 weeks had passed. No calls. No apologies. The silence had become unbearable, but not for me. I had grown used to it, even embraced it. The peace of being free from the expectations that had once weighed so heavily on me felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. It was a strange satisfaction, knowing that I wasn't the one who had to keep holding everything together. My family had made their choice, and now they had to deal with the consequences. But that's when it came. My father called. I recognized the number, the cold, unfeeling tone of his voice even before I pressed the green button. "Ryan, we need to talk," he said, his words clipped and emotionless. I almost laughed. "We need to talk?" I repeated, letting the words sink in. "How about we don't? How about you let me be for once in your life?" I could feel my pulse quicken, my heart thudding loudly in my ears. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I sure as hell wasn't prepared for his next words. "You've made things impossible here," he continued, his voice low but cutting. "You've hurt your mother." My anger flared like a firestorm. "I've hurt her?" I shouted, my voice rising despite myself. "I'm the one who has been hurt, don't you see that? All these years I've been the one carrying the weight for you, for her, for Jessica. And now you've thrown me away like I was nothing." There was a long silence on the other end, and for a moment I thought he had hung up. But no, his voice came through, softer, almost hesitant. "Ryan, this isn't just about the money. It's about family. We're family, son." I let out a bitter laugh. "Family?" I said, almost choking on the word. "You're a joke. You don't get to call me your son when you've treated me like garbage all these years." My hands clenched into fists, my knuckles white with the pressure. "If you want me to come back, to fix everything, then you can kiss my ass. I'm done." The phone call ended with him trying to apologize again. But I had heard enough. I wasn't going to fall for it. Not again. Not this time. I wasn't going to be their doormat anymore. Days passed without any contact from them. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of relief. But then, as I was sitting at my desk one evening, the phone rang again. This time it wasn't my father. It was Jessica. Her name appeared on the screen, and my stomach twisted into knots. She was the last person I wanted to hear from right now. After everything that had happened, the last thing I needed was to get caught in her web of manipulation. But something inside me told me to pick up. "Ryan, we need to talk," she said, her voice cool and measured, just like our parents. "I know things have been bad between us, but we're family. And we need to fix this. Mom and Dad are falling apart. They can't do this without you." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "They've always done this without me, Jessica. You don't get it. You're their golden child. You've never had to lift a finger, while I've been the one carrying them. And now, you want me to come crawling back?" My voice was sharp, almost venomous. There was silence on the other end, but I could hear her breathing. She didn't know what to say to that. But then she spoke again, her tone softer now. "I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. But this isn't just about the past. It's about the future, Ryan. If you don't come back, if you don't fix things, we'll lose everything." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of her words settle heavily on my chest. "I've already lost everything," I said quietly. "And I'm not going to lose myself too." She was quiet for a long time, and for a moment, I thought the conversation had ended. But then she spoke again, her voice more urgent. "Ryan, please. Mom's sick. She needs you. Dad is falling apart. We all need you to fix this. Please." Her words hung in the air, like a weight pressing down on me. I had always been the one to fix things, to carry the burden. But now I wasn't so sure I wanted to anymore. I stood up abruptly, pacing around my small apartment. My heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to go back to them. But Jessica was right about one thing: they were falling apart. And I couldn't help but wonder, if I didn't fix this, would it destroy them all? But in that moment, I knew what I had to do. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice low and steady. And with that, I hung up the phone. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew this was the moment that would determine everything. This was the crossroads, the point where I could choose to walk away forever, or step back into the role they had always forced me into. I sat down at my desk, my hands trembling as I gripped the phone in my hand. I didn't know which decision would haunt me more, walking away, or going back. I sat in my apartment, the phone still in my hand, the weight of Jessica's plea hanging in the air like a thick fog. I wasn't used to this sense of being pulled in two directions at once. Part of me wanted to give in. They were my family, after all. And when I really thought about it, I realized how deeply I had always yearned for their approval, for a place in their lives where I wasn't just the background character. I had spent years making sure everything was okay for them, sacrificing everything without ever asking for anything in return. But was it all worth it? Was I ready to go back to the same pattern of giving without receiving? The thought gnawed me, and I felt my grip on the phone tighten. The weight of the decision was almost unbearable. Part of me wanted to fix things, to go back and make everything right again, like I always did. But the other part of me, the one that had been pushed aside for so long, was screaming at me to stay gone, to let them deal with the mess they had created. I couldn't decide. The phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. A message this time, not from Jessica, but from my mom. "Ryan, please. We're trying to reach you. We can't do this without you. Your father is falling apart." I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. Part of me felt a flicker of something, guilt, maybe? It was hard to tell. But it was the same pattern again. They needed me. They always needed me. But the truth was, they didn't deserve me. I spent the rest of the evening in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I couldn't bring myself to call them. Instead, I poured myself another drink, staring out the window at the rain pouring down outside. It seemed fitting. A storm was raging inside me, and it mirrored the chaos I had left behind. The next morning, I woke up with the same heaviness in my chest. The decision still loomed over me, but I couldn't keep running from it forever. I had to do something. I couldn't let them continue to spiral out of control without taking any responsibility for their actions. But was I strong enough to do what needed to be done? I stood up, paced the room, my thoughts tangled. Then, without thinking too much about it, I grabbed my keys, my coat, and walked out the door. As I drove to my parents' house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread building in my stomach. What would I say? What would I do? It was a moment I had been avoiding for weeks, and now it was here, a decision that would define the rest of my life. When I arrived, the house looked the same as it always did. Nothing had changed. The familiar creak of the door as I pushed it open felt like a strange reminder of all the times I had come home to fix things for them. And there they were, my mother and father, sitting in the living room like nothing had ever happened. But the air between us was different now. There was a distance, a coldness that hadn't been there before. My mom stood up as soon as she saw me, her face a mixture of relief and guilt. "Ryan," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You came." I didn't answer at first. I just stood there, taking it all in. The house. The silence. The fact that they were still here, still pretending everything was fine. But nothing was fine. Not anymore. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice hoarse with emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. "I've done everything for you. For years. I've paid your bills, your utilities, your debts. And you never even once said thank you. And now you expect me to come back and fix everything? Why? Why should I?" My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes avoiding mine. "Ryan, please, we were wrong. We should have never treated you the way we did. But we need you. Your mother, she's not well. She needs you." I felt my anger rise, the familiar sting of betrayal cutting deeper than it ever had before. "You need me?" I asked, my voice rising. "After all this time, now you need me? What happened to the strong family that I used to believe in? What happened to the parents who were supposed to take care of me, not the other way around?" There was no answer. No apology. Just the empty, hollow words of a family that had taken everything from me. "I don't want to fix this," I said, my voice steady now, no longer filled with anger but with a cold certainty. "I'm done. I'm done with you. And I'm done with the idea of being the one who cleans up your mess every time." The silence stretched between us like a chasm, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing but clarity. I wasn't going to be their fixer anymore. I wasn't going to be the one who always came running when things fell apart. I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment I had been avoiding. But I knew now, this was the only way I could move forward. I stepped out of the house, leaving behind the family that had never really seen me for who I was. And as I walked back to my car, I knew one thing: I was never going back. I drove away from their house with the sound of their silence still ringing in my ears. The weight of my decision hung heavily in the air, but there was something freeing about it. Something finally right. For years, I had lived for them, sacrificed my own happiness for the sake of family. But today, I had chosen myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. As I sped down the road, the rain still pounding against my windshield, I couldn't shake the feeling of what had just happened. The finality of it. The release. I had walked away from them, from the weight they had put on my shoulders, and I had never felt lighter. But the freedom was not without its cost. I couldn't help but think of Jessica's words. She had begged me to come back, to fix things. The part of me that wanted to be the good son, the one who always did the right thing, struggled with it. But as I drove, I realized that the cost of my loyalty to them had been too high for too long. I had been giving, always giving, and receiving nothing in return. The truth, painful as it was that my family had never truly seen me. They had never really understood me. The next day, I decided to start over. Completely. I left my apartment, packed up my things, and moved to a new city. It wasn't about running away, it was about creating something for myself. A life where I wasn't just an extension of someone else's expectations. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew it had to be different. I needed to carve out my own space, a place where I could finally breathe without looking over my shoulder. In the weeks that followed, I found a new rhythm. I settled into my new life with a quiet sense of peace. It wasn't easy. The loneliness still crept in at times, and the guilt, especially about my mother's health, nagged at me, but it was nothing compared to the suffocating weight I had lived with before. I kept telling myself that it would get easier with time. And it did. I started going to therapy, talking through all the things I had never allowed myself to feel. It was tough, sometimes brutally so. But every session, every breakthrough, felt like a new step in reclaiming my own life. My therapist helped me realize something important, that I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to be the one who always made things right. And if I was going to heal, I had to stop carrying the burden of their expectations. A few months later, I received a letter. It was from my mother. I had no idea what to expect, but I opened it with a mix of curiosity and dread. The words were simple, but they hit hard. "Ryan, we miss you. We're sorry. We were wrong. Please come back. We need you. You're our son." I stared at the letter for a long time. It was exactly what I had expected, an apology. A plea. But what I had been waiting for, the acknowledgement of all the pain, of all the years I had spent keeping them afloat, was absent. It was just a simple "we miss you." I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. My fingers lingered on the paper for a moment longer than necessary. The part of me that had once yearned for their approval, for their love, wanted to go back. But I couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. They had shown me who they were, and I had already walked away from the person I used to be for them. Instead of calling them, instead of going back like they wanted, I did something unexpected. I burned the letter. Watched the flames dance as it crumbled to ash in my hands. And I realized, as I stood there watching it disappear, that I was finally free. I would never go back to that life. Not to the burden. Not to the expectations. Not to the family that had never really seen me for who I was. In that moment, I understood what it meant to be truly free. And I knew that no matter what happened from here on out, I would always have myself. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was ready to walk it on my own terms.